Las condiciones en que las mujeres gestan para otras personas son diversas, ¿no? Es conocido que junto a regulaciones más garantistas y más respetuosas con los derechos humanos, existen regulaciones que no lo son tanto e incluso prácticas directamente fraudulentas. También son diversas las maneras o las formas en las que se ha producido la filiación de los hijos e hijas nacidas por esta práctica. Ello nos demuestra que la gestación subrogada en sí misma no tiene por qué estar mal, sino que depende de las condiciones y de las reglas en las que ésta se regula. Para la mesa de hoy, tenemos la suerte de contar con el testimonio y la experiencia de mujeres gestantes y de hijas, en este caso, nacidas por gestación subrogada. Entonces, pues, empezamos, si queréis, a preguntaros y esperamos que os sea útil esta mesa, ¿vale? Bien, en aquel extremo tenemos a Pilots y Ginger's Workouts, que son estudiantes de educación secundaria, nacidas por gestación subrogada en Iowa, y a Rachel Williams, Rachel, que es contable y que es la gestante que dio a luz a estas chicas. Luego tenemos a Lía Yartosio, a Lía. Ella es estudiante, artista y activista por la diversidad familiar, y nacida por gestación subrogada en California, y la gestante que dio a luz fue Nancy, que está a su lado, ¿vale? Nancy Ann Harper. Y luego contamos con Fiorella Meneson. Ella es diseñadora gráfica, también nacida por gestación subrogada y muy conocida, quizás la hayáis oído su nombre, porque fue la denuncia, el activismo de sus padres, que acudieron al Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos, lo que dio lugar a una sentencia pionera en el Tribunal Europeo de Derechos Humanos, donde se planteaba que, al margen de cómo los niños o niñas hayan nacido, estos niños y niñas tienen derecho, por el interés superior del menor, a estar filiados y a tener sus derechos. Y también a Mary Ellen, que fue su gestante, ¿vale? Entonces, venga, pues ya les doy la palabra, y la primera pregunta sería para las gestantes, ¿no? Para todas, ¿no? Quería preguntaros cómo fue que ofrecisteis a gestar para otras personas, si tuvisteis dudas, miedo. ¿Cómo reaccionó la gente cuando le contasteis que ibais a hacer gestación para otras personas? ¿Empiezas tú, Nancy, por ejemplo?
Sure. I had a friend who had tried to become a surrogate, and that's what started making me think about it. I was in nursing school at the time, and when I got done with nursing school, I thought about it a little more. I had 4 children of my own and didn't want any more children, but I loved being pregnant. So I contacted an agency through Los Angeles that worked primarily with alternative couples, and Franco and Tommaso were the first couple I met, and it's just history from there. My family was extremely supportive. My father tells everybody he has grandchildren in Italy still. My kids were very supportive. Me and my oldest daughter were actually pregnant at the same time both times, so that was kind of, so I also have a granddaughter the same age as Leah. And they even look alike, which is strange. But every once in a while you tell people and they have a negative kind of feeling for it, and I just let them say what they want to say and ignore it. But all in all, for me, it was just a very positive experience. So.
¿Alguien más quiere comentar algo? Marielle.
Well, I became a surrogate because I loved being a mother and I loved being pregnant. And my dad is the one who actually suggested I look into it. He knew I loved being pregnant but was only going to have one biological child of my own, and then I have an adopted son. So I thought about it for a long time, probably about a year before I really seriously looked into it, because I thought, well, why would someone pick me? You know, what about me would somebody want to help them in that kind of way? But then I finally decided I was going to do it. I interviewed with several agencies until I settled on one that I felt was a good fit for me. And then I met the twins' dad, and he's just the most spectacular human I think I've ever met. So it was just easy to move on from there and move forward.
For me, I was adopted, and I found out when I was 17. And I always wanted a large family for myself. And so when I was young and I got married and I started having children, I kept thinking that somebody gave my mother a gift. And so I actually met somebody who was a surrogate, and I thought that's when that seed was planted, and I wanted to also help somebody. So when I had my fourth child, I went to my best friend and I said, I'm looking into surrogacy. And she was excited, and she said she also wanted to do that. So it was a journey that we started together. Everybody was very supportive. My children were excited. I found an agency in San Diego, and I met the Minnesons, and it was just love at first sight. We instantly became really good friends, and I have known her and also the children their entire lives. It was just a wonderful feeling, very fulfilling.
Muy bien, otra pregunta que os quería hacer. ¿Qué exigencias os hicieron para poder gestar para otras personas? ¿Cómo fue el proceso y cómo fue que conocisteis a los padres y las madres de intención? Y si fue positivo para vosotras esa relación o no. Por ejemplo, ¿empiezas tú?
Yes, so it is quite a lengthy process. You do have to go through psychological, you do have to have a medical clearance. They're very detailed to make sure that you are mentally aware of what you're going to be doing. It was very positive. I felt very comfortable. At first, I think my first contact was like a sheet of paper that explained the couple, and it had some photos of them. And then our very first contact was on the phone. And this was many years ago. It was before emails. And so it was a lot of FedEx at first and a lot of expensive phone calls. But then we ended up getting a fax machine. And that's how we communicated. So like every morning I would wake up and I would have a fax. And it was just a quick little note, encouraging me. And if I had a doctor's appointment, they wanted to know how everything went. So it was really exciting. And then they came to San Diego and we met in person. And it was wonderful. We already felt like friends, and everything was really good. It was very comfortable for me. And my children, my husband, everybody felt good.
I also went through extensive psychological screening. I also had to go through a financial screening, a home study. My agency really wanted to make sure that, I was stable on my own as a human being before entering into any sort of arrangement. We did I think they called it like a match quiz, where they asked me the hard questions. What would I do if the baby had Down syndrome and the parents wanted to terminate, or we got pregnant with multiples and they wanted to reduce, which I think it was a blessing to have to work through those problems before even meeting, to make sure we were on the same page. When I met John, I believe the first time we met was in person with the gal that ran our agency, and we talked for about an hour and a half, and sparks flew, I guess you could say, and we decided to move forward, and it was extremely positive. We're lucky because we live in the same city, so he was able to come to every doctor's appointment and physically be there. We had dinners every Sunday, so he could come and talk to the girls while they were in my belly, and it was amazing. He was great with my children as well. I just consider them extended family.
Same for me. There was a lot of psychological evaluations. The financial part was a big thing. That's why I waited till I was done with nursing school. I've been out of school for about a year and a half. And the questions, are you willing to do a fetal reduction? Which I wasn't. So I was matched with a couple that also was saying, we'll only implant 2 embryos, because that was as far as I was willing to go. So those questions are good too. Do you want to have contact? I wanted to work with a couple that was open to contact. So they do ask all the hard questions and match you. We met the first time in person at the agency, and there was probably about a 2-hour discussion with an interpreter and a lawyer, answering questions, asking both of us different things. And then we went and we had lunch, and after lunch, apparently we both were immediately on the phone to the agency saying, absolutely yes, these are the people I want to work with. So now they have Leah and a younger brother named Andrea as well.
Bueno, ahora la pregunta va para las hijas en este caso, ¿no? Quería preguntaros, ¿cuándo y cómo supisteis que habíais nacido mediante una gestación subrogada? ¿Cómo fue? ¿Os generó alguna duda? ¿Cómo reaccionó? ¿Cómo reacciona la gente que os conoce? Y otra pregunta también, ¿los gametos que se utilizaron para vuestra gestación eran de vuestros padres, de la gestante, de un donante, de una donante? Para cualquiera. ¿Empiezas tú, por ejemplo, Fiorella?
Yeah, I can start. To me, I always knew that I was born through surrogacy. My parents, I think when I was in your belly, they were already telling me and my sister that we were like in our surrogate belly, and so to me it was so obvious that when I was a child, I felt that everyone was born through surrogacy and had like multiple like persons into their lives, and I was kind of taken aback when I learned that it was not everyone's life because I always like felt really lucky, like to have my parents who are really loving, but also to have Mary and her family, and also I was born from an egg donation as well, and I was lucky enough, it's like it was my mom's friend, so I knew everyone and I knew their role, and I knew that there was obviously so much love and support, and that's it. I think it was very obvious to me, and it's a really great story and I'm really proud of it.
I also always knew. Obviously my family is a rainbow family with 2 homosexual dads, so it was pretty obvious. And I was also born through an egg donation. My parents were always pretty transparent. We knew Nancy ever since I was born, and I always knew my story in a more particular way as I grew up. So at first, obviously, it was pretty generic as an explanation, maybe through animated books, speaking about all different types of families. And then as I grew up, the conversations got more specific, and I got to understand how it really worked and what it was and what people thought about it in the world. I've never had any bad experiences with people learning about how I was born. I remember when I was a kid, actually, my friends were all pretty jealous of me, and they all were talking like, I want 2 dads too, why does she get 2 when I only have 1? So yeah, it was all, I've never had pretty bad experiences, I would say. It was something that I grew up in, always feeling as if it was normal. So that was just my way of living, my family, and there were no questions about it.
With me, ever since I was very young, my parents have always been very transparent with me that I was a surrogate baby. I have 2 dads also, so, you know, it's kind of obvious that 2 men, that just doesn't biologically work out. So, yeah, I was also in contact with the carrier throughout my entire life, and so it was very much just like, oh, I've always thought of her as kind of like, the only way I can put it is like my best friend's mom, you know, like she's not a parental figure, but she's a safe person for me. And I've never experienced that much backlash about being a surrogate baby. I remember in around like 3rd grade, someone said, "Oh, you're a test tube baby," and I was like, "Yeah, kind of." And yeah, a lot of kids would just be very confused with what surrogacy was, and so I kind of have to go through the whole process of explaining it, because most of the time 5th graders don't know what surrogacy is. And yeah, I had never experienced any backlash or bullying for being a surrogate baby. People always had questions. Some of them would say, "Are you adopted? Like, you have 2 dads? How does that even work?" And so I'd have to go through the whole explanation process. But yeah, overall, it's always been a very nice experience.
For me, it was kind of the same. Like, I always knew that, like, oh my God, that it was through surrogacy. And all my friends would be like, "How were you born? Because you have 2 dads." And so then I'd have to, like, explain the entire process and everything. Even to strangers, they were like, "Oh, you have 2 dads, so you're adopted." I was like, "No, that's just not how it works." So then I would again explain the entire thing. But once I did explain the entire thing, they like understood more and like knew like more of what was going on. So they like didn't really have any questions after that, or like were mean about it, really. I guess to some people who didn't know, they could have been a little bit like passive aggressive with it, but other than that, there was nothing.
Quería preguntaros si habéis tenido alguna experiencia negativa de gente que os haya comentado alguna opinión de mala manera, y cómo afecta el debate público, ¿no? Quiero decir, cuando oí en el debate público, en la sociedad, lo que piensan determinadas personas de la gestación subrogada, que es violencia, que se explota y esclaviza a las gestantes, ¿qué pensáis? ¿Cómo os afecta eso?
I think it's absurd for me. We choose to go and do this for someone. Nobody's knocking on your door, putting you in handcuffs and making you participate in this type of situation. It's 100% free will, and yeah, it's odd to me that people would think something like that.
I think a big part of it is a lot of people who hear about surrogacy hear about the bad things about it. That's what gets put on the news. That's what gets put on the internet, not the good stories like this. They hear the bad things. They hear about, countries like Ukraine and India that are, not doing this in an ethical way. And so that kind of puts a bad taste in their mouth. Years ago when Leah was maybe 3 or 4, Andrea was just born, I went and I spoke for the Italian Rainbow family in a panel, and there was a lesbian couple that had come up to me afterwards and said that they never understood how a woman could have a child and give this child away, because they fought so hard to have their family. And they said that seeing you with the children and hearing what you said, she goes, so you change one mind by letting people know, and that's what needs to happen, is more people need to step up and make the good stories just as popular as the bad stories, so people understand. When I was pregnant the first time, I had a nurse that I worked with telling me I was going to be the downfall of the human race. So, and look, we're still here, so it obviously didn't happen. But yeah, the good stories, and the people need to get out there and let them know. So when you hear something bad, tell somebody good about, a story that you heard, a family that you know. Leah was the first baby born into their family in 19, 20 years. Mm-hmm. And when I came over and watched how that brought that family together and what a change it was, that was just a feeling that was just incredible for me, incredible for them. People are always going to have a negative thing, but they're never going to change their mind if we don't help people change their minds.
Otra cuestión, entre quienes se oponen a la regulación de la gestación por sustitución, plantean que es imposible que una mujer quiera gestar para otras personas, ¿no? Hay un cierto esencialismo biológico, ¿no? Como si todas las mujeres vivieran la gestación de la misma manera, ¿no? Y si vamos a la práctica vemos que hay mujeres que abortan, o mujeres que se quedan embarazadas y no quieren tener ese hijo, y todo lo contrario, y mujeres que hacen esfuerzos increíbles para poder tener un hijo. Y quería preguntaros, el vínculo durante el embarazo, el vínculo que estableciste o cómo viviste el embarazo y qué diferencia había o hubo en relación al embarazo de vuestros hijos propios. Es decir, ¿la forma de vivir la gestación fue diferente? ¿En qué fue diferente con vuestros propios hijos a cuando gestabais para otras personas? Por ejemplo, Nancy.
Yeah, so I had 4 kids of my own before I decided to become a surrogate. And when you have a child of your own, it starts that way. This is your child. This is you and your partner's creation. It's a little bit you and a little bit them. So that's something you fall in love with that baby from the time you find out. Well, when you go through surrogacy and you're going into this with the knowledge that this is for somebody else. You're using an egg donor. You're using, this is genetically nothing of yours. So it starts different. Not to mention, you get pregnant in an extremely different way. So, not quite that bond. But you build a bond with the family. When Leah was born, Tommaso and Franco stayed at my house afterwards, and you kind of I didn't want to interfere, but as being a mom, there's times I just wanted to snatch her up and say, this is how you do it. But I left them alone, and I let them experience. I let them learn kind of on their own. When I had Andrea, by that time, I'd had such a good relationship with all of them, their families and stuff. That was a little bit harder. I think when they all left the United States after that was probably a tough one. But I felt like my family was leaving, these people that have become so close in my life. But it's a very different sensation when you're doing this, for somebody else. I think it's important that women who do this have had at least one child of their own, because to experience all that emotion of childbirth for the first time and then not getting to be a parent, I think that might be a little bit much for somebody. But those of us that have had our 4 kids, it wasn't difficult, and there is still a bond, but it's different, I don't look at Leah as a daughter. I think of her as like a niece or my friend's child. So, but we're still close. So.
I would feel very much the same. The bond was very different. I mean, I only have one biological child, and I felt this fierce, mama bear protection of her the second I knew she was coming. And I did feel, while I was pregnant, very protective over the twins, but I was so bonded with their father and so excited for him.
Yeah.
The day I saw him meet his babies was just magical. It was one of the proudest and most favorite days of my entire life, and I love them. But like you said, more like my friends' kids, I want great things for them, and I hope they know that they could come to me if they ever needed anything. But it's different. But I also have an adopted son, and I do feel I have a very maternal, biological feeling bond with him. So I think it can be very circumstantial. You have to really be aware of what you're getting into, and they're going somewhere great, because if you didn't like the parents, I would hope you weren't going through the process with them.
And when you watch them become parents for that first time, this isn't just somebody who's, I'm having a kid. This is somebody who has fought so hard to have a child, and it's so much more emotional in a way, because they really do. it's number one, it's expensive, legal-wise, especially in certain countries, having to go to other countries to even be able to do in vitro. This is something that people really struggle for. So that makes it so much more emotional that you were able to help somebody do that.
¿Quieres añadir algo, Nancy? No, perdón.
So I knew, from the beginning that it was not, I was pregnant, but it was not going to be my child. And it was just a wonderful feeling. I felt really good and healthy, and speaking with the parents and, going through everything that they were going through as far as like getting ready for the baby to come. So I knew when the delivery and seeing them so excited and happy and seeing the babies, it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. But I knew that it was not my children, but it was something that I cared for during my pregnancy, and of course, I care for them, seeing them grow up, but not as my children, as my friends' children. So it's just wonderful to see them growing up.
Sí, ahora quería preguntaros a la hija, ¿no? En España cada vez se está dificultando más la afiliación. Recientemente, en mayo de este año, el Ministerio de Justicia ha sacado una instrucción que dificulta las afiliaciones con sentencia judicial. Quería preguntarle a Fiorella, ¿no?, que sus padres tuvieron una lucha legal para conseguir la afiliación. Quería preguntarle cómo te afectó eso, cómo viviste eso personalmente, el hecho de que se retrasara la afiliación, qué consecuencias tuvo en ti y también qué consecuencias tuvo para ti el hecho de que tu caso saliera a la esfera pública, ¿no? Y que todo el mundo te conozca un poco por eso, ¿no?
Yeah, our case is a little bit special because we had like 16 law rulings before becoming not a real family, but be recognized as one. So for like 18 years, I was not my parents' child. I was like kind of a ghost, like living in France, going to school, living somewhere with some adults, but it was kind of weird because there was like a gap between my everyday life with I always knew my parents, and they cared for me as my parents. Like they were there for me. They, I don't know, they helped me when I was crying. They raised me. They made sure that I was feeling happy, and that was so obvious to me. And that was my reality. That was my life. I didn't really think about it. But the law, like friends as an abstract concept, was not like recognizing it, and it was really, I think my parents protected me. They wanted to keep me away from it, and they did their best because that's what parents do. But the more I grew, the more I realized that difference, and the more I saw how much it was affecting them. And I think that was the hardest thing for me. It was that I saw that my parents, they did everything, and they are the best parents ever. I would not change a thing, and it was not recognized, and we had to fight to be just like seen as a normal family. And I think that's what also drew me to like starting when I started sharing my story when I was like 15. I started speaking like to the media, showing my face. Going to some debates, because in France we don't have like real discussion. We have debates where there is like the far right and someone like me, and the conversation is not going anywhere. But I wanted to show how much normal I was and how much obvious it was for me and how easy it was. And I don't know. I think when we won at the CEDH, the reason what I felt was that I was like, never again. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. I don't want any children to feel the way that my sister and we felt. I don't want any kid to see their mom cry because the law called her not our mom. And that was the hardest things. I think I love my parents so much, and I want to protect them, and I also want to protect like other families because we have an association, and I see all these little kids. They don't know what's happening. They don't know the situation in France or in Spain or in Italy. And I want to protect them from that because that's not something anyone has to live through. And I'm thankful because I think that it made our family stronger. I know it made me who I am. I feel like I'm really brave because of it. I had to learn it because no one was like fighting for us except us. But yeah, it's not a normal situation. And seeing that even now it's been 7 years and we have so much work to do. There is so much left to do. I think the fight is never done. And yeah, that's it.
I would like to add something. Also in Italy, the surrogacy was never spoken about at all. It was such an uncomfortable subject that no one spoke about it. And then in the past years, it started becoming like a problem because obviously there were many families and a whole fight also started there. And that is when I realized actually how impactful my type of family was in the state that I was living in. And I just wanted to add, obviously, I thank you so much for what you said. And I feel like it also has such an impact, like what we're doing also has such an impact on all the other young kids. For example, last year, I was giving, when I met Thank you. I was giving a speech in the Italian Parliament, and I remember a couple of months later, I was in an assembly of rainbow families, and a small child, like 6-year-old child, came to me, and he was like, I really wanted to thank you. It was so important what you did. Like, I cried that night in bed thinking about like your words, and it reassured me so much. And that moved me so much, knowing how even though they're so young and they should be out playing, but they're actually feeling sad and disappointed and unwelcomed in their own like world where they were born, where they grew up in. Like their family isn't recognized, and it's really, I think what we're doing. I feel like I'm doing it, yes, for me and for my family, but mostly for the future families, the future kids that are more and more and more every year. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Gracias. ¿Queréis añadir algo? Sí, ¿queréis añadir?
For me, I live in the U.S., so it's very much widely accepted there. It's not really an issue in the U.S., so I can't really speak on the matter of people saying this is wrong, this is horrible, because I'm very lucky to live where I live and be able to not have to worry about people saying how me and my sister are born is bad or should be illegalized and stuff. But it's really eye-opening to talk to other surrogate babies, and kind of realize that not all places have the same kind of rights, and how different places, different countries will have different laws. And I think it's strange that people will say such mean things to families who are just trying to live, and families who just want kids and want to live a happy life just like every other family that exists. And I think we should continue talking about this until every country and every place can do it safely and has a good idea of what it is, so that everyone can be able to have a chance to have a family.
Ahora quería preguntar a las gestantes, ¿no? Si tuvierais la capacidad de ser vosotras quienes hicierais la regulación, de la gestación por sustitución, ¿qué aspectos pensáis que debe de recoger una regulación para que sea garantista y proteja los derechos, bueno, de todas las partes y de vosotras en particular? A quien quiera. Si quieres empezar tú, Mary.
Before you go into an agreement, have a good experience as far as like what you're looking for. But I would hope that in the EU that they would accept surrogacy, and I'm here to help however I could. That people that want to have a child for somebody else is doing it on their own free will, and to give another family a baby.
I think a big part of it, as far as regulation, is how we kind of all explained everything that we had to go through. Is regulate the agencies that are doing it, so that you know that people are having a psychological evaluation. That and this is kind of funny. So you do a lot of psych evaluations, and just FYI, I failed my first one because they said I wasn't too impulsive. But they ask you questions about things that maybe you did as a kid. Did you ever jump off, do something that could have hurt yourself? So then after I talked to them, and I said, well, I don't do that anymore. And they said, well, when we say be honest, maybe not that honest. But to make sure that your people are doing it for the right reason, and making sure, and we get that there is a financial incentive on this. But make sure people aren't doing it just for the financial incentive. This shouldn't be a job. This should be a gift that you're giving to somebody. And getting money for, the lack of work and what we do for our physical bodies and the medical stuff, that's one thing. But making sure that people are using agencies that really do this type of screening helps you avoid the bad stories. And as far as a surrogate right, that also needs to be regulated. I had recently spoke with a woman who had hired a surrogate to have a child for her, and later in the pregnancy, because there was going to be a possible genetic issue with the child, the surrogate wanted to terminate the pregnancy, and she did not want to, and was not given that choice. She was willing to accept the risk that this child may have had some issues. So those are all things that you need to iron out in the beginning. Are you willing to do a fetal reduction? Are you willing to terminate a pregnancy if there's a chance of a risk to the baby? A surrogate should always, always, always get the right to terminate a pregnancy if there is a chance of a health risk to her. That should never, ever be questioned. But these are things that need to all be ironed out in the very beginning to make sure that everybody's on the same page and there's nothing that comes up in the middle and causes problems legally or physically for a woman.
I agree with a lot of what Nancy just said. I think it's important for the agencies to be regulated and making sure that they're performing these steps with the screenings. I think it is very risky not to be doing that. I haven't heard of another surrogate, maybe you guys can speak differently, that I had to do a home study where a social worker actually came into my home and made sure, that my kids were well taken care of and I had a good, healthy environment. That I was in a good position to be healthy and happy and have a healthy pregnancy. But the most important thing I feel was the match test, where we did talk about all the things that could go wrong. It's hard to do because you're so excited and you think about all the joy and the happiness, but there is risk that bad things can happen in unfortunate situations with Down syndromes, or maybe you get pregnant with too many babies than your body can handle, and that having that tough discussion is important.
Quería preguntaros también qué pensáis sobre cuál es el mejor momento para hacer la filiación. Si en el momento del nacimiento o con posterioridad, como en el Reino Unido. ¿Cuál es vuestra opinión desde vuestra experiencia, ¿no?
I would say before you're getting into anything, I mean, you should have these things lined out. I think if you're waiting to regulate something after the child is born, that could be too late.
And a lot of those are things that are actually before they even match you with a couple. The agency I used was called Growing Generations. Those were all questions that were asked of me before I even met a couple, because then they look for a couple who you guys all have the same answers. And that cuts out time. Instead of you say, well, you don't want to, Tommaso and Franco had to fly from Italy. I flew to Los Angeles. Of course, I was just in California, not far. But you don't want to find out there that you guys have something that you completely don't agree on. That's another huge expense. So all of those things were questions that I was asked, and they were asked before we even met. So I do like the idea of the home study to come in, and especially since there's so many questions about unethical and women being basically used as paid hosts, So that's another way to make sure that this is a good environment. And I don't know what you guys refer to them. I always call them baby farms in other countries and stuff. And I'd read a thing one time about the Ukraine that was something that happened a lot there. But that's how you make sure this kind of stuff isn't happening, is you really look into this woman's world. To make sure that this is being done for the right reasons.
¿Quieres añadir algo? ¿No?
No, that exactly everything.
Quería preguntaros ahora a las hijas, ¿vale? Está habiendo un movimiento de hijos e hijas nacidos adoptados, ¿no? Que están reivindicando conocer la identidad de quienes les gestaron, ¿no? Quería preguntaros, ¿pensáis que debe estar regulado como un derecho el derecho a conocer a quién os gestó? ¿Pensáis que eso debe estar recogido como un derecho?
I think just seeing like our different relationships here, like it shows just how much important it is to be able to know like your surrogate, and I'm not sure I understood the question, but I think everyone should know about their story, regardless how it has been done. And I think for me, I'm really grateful that I've always knew who Mary was and who my egg donor was, because it made things so much clearer from the start. There was no confusion, and like I said, my mother said that you can never have too much love, like too much people loving you, and I think that's really true. Like it's really great to be born into a world where like so many people came together and help you like exist. Like it's never a bad thing. So yeah, I think everyone should be able to have answers to their questions, because if there is like a secret or like no information given, there will be doubts, there will be questions, and it's never really great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Obviously, every family has a different situation, so I don't think it should be an obligation where it's wrong if you don't know your surrogate mother, and it shouldn't be felt like a weight. But I definitely think every child should have a right to that possibility, to be able to think, well, maybe I would like to meet her, maybe I have some questions, maybe I want to know her. And in my case, I feel like this was perfect for me, already knowing Nancy ever since I grew up, and then getting to know her a bit better as I grew up. I feel like that worked for me, but it doesn't have to be like that. Everyone can see how it works better for them. And yeah, I think there's so much pressure in society on this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do, this is the right family, this is the wrong family, this, blah, blah, blah. Like anyone can just do what they feel is right for them and what they feel comfortable with. As long as there is mutual respect and love in a family, that's all that there needs to be.
For me, I don't know who the egg donor was, but that's never bothered me in the slightest. You know, when I turn 18, and if the egg donor agrees, then we can meet each other. But if that doesn't end up happening, I'm perfectly content with that. Yeah, it's obviously if, like, I've known Rachel ever since I was younger, and obviously she isn't my biological mother. She was just the lady who carried me. And I think that that's, like, a good thing to know the people who carried you as you were inside, like, the womb. In my opinion, that's kind of important, but I know not everyone has that opportunity, and I'm never gonna say, oh, that's bad that you don't know that, because that's not the kid's fault. Or if there's different situations, and it's definitely taken by case scenario.
Again, I also don't know the egg donor. I am a little bit curious, just to, like, see a photo or something, or like what she's like, just so, like, I know, like, what she looks like, and then my dad, like, and then there's me. But again, I think it's, like, an option, like, it shouldn't be forced, like they said, to, like, know or, like, want to know who, like, carried you. Obviously we know her, or the egg donor. But again, I think the relationships are good here, obviously, because we're all here, but yeah.
Y ahora quería preguntaros a las gestantes, ¿no? Si todas las gestantes estarían dispuestas, bueno, a que se conozca su identidad, de acuerdo, pero al tipo de relación que se establece después con los hijos o hijas nacidas por esta práctica, quiero preguntar, ¿qué piensan otras gestantes? Que si vosotros tenéis muy buena relación, ¿no? Pero hay otros casos de gestantes que no quieren tener tanta relación, que simplemente quieren gestar para otras personas y luego se quieren olvidar. ¿Qué pensáis de eso también, no? Si pensáis que, bueno, no puede obligar, sino, pero ¿qué pensáis, no? Tienes derecho a conocer a quien te gestó, pero ¿con qué límites, no? No sé si me explico.
I've been a part of a lot of surrogacy support groups, and I've never met a surrogate who didn't want to have at least a small relationship with the children they carried. So I've never personally experienced anyone wanting that kind of situation.
I have actually met a couple of surrogates that wanted nothing to do with the children afterwards. I had gone to a retreat for different surrogates, and there was one lady who had actually had twins for a couple, and they came early, and the twins had to go home with her for a day and a half, and how upset and angry she was. And to me, I thought, what a joy to get to bond with them all on your own for a minute before they get there. But that's their choice. That's somebody else's choice. And if they're matched with a couple that also wants the same thing, then that's great. I do think, like, they were saying, there should be something in there that if the children, are older and want to find out, they'll at least be open to getting to meet them and see them face to face, or at least a photo, so you know where you came from. But if a couple wants no contact afterwards and the surrogate wants no contact, then that's kind of between them. I think they're missing out on an awful lot, because it's just a great experience. Not in just doing it, but watching. Look at this incredible woman right here. It's just,
I also was a surrogate with my best friend, and we did it around the same time, and she was with a couple from Japan. And the couple didn't really want to have a relationship afterwards. Even though she wanted to, they didn't, and so she respected their wishes. So usually whenever I see Sylvie and the girls, you know, she likes to come along because she feels like, she really feels like she's missed out, and she would have liked to have had a relationship with them. So I think that the parents also missed out as well as her, which is quite sad.
Quería aprovechar ahora un segundito mientras se recogen y se ordenan las preguntas, y la moderadora después ya continúa también ella, porque desde la organización se quiere agradecer especialmente a las gestantes que estéis aquí. Como comentábamos antes, se habla mucho de este tema y se estudia mucho, pero es fundamental que precisamente las mujeres gestantes, que es de las que siempre se habla, se debate, se defiende sobre su dignidad, sus derechos, su libertad, que sean ellas las que hablen por sí mismas. Entonces les quería agradecer que no solamente el desplazamiento, porque vienen además desde lejos, en este caso, sino su generosidad y su valentía, porque entendemos que no es fácil venir aquí a hablar de uno mismo, de un área tan personal, y abrirse un poquito su interior. Y por eso desde la asociación Son Nuestros Hijos querían hacer las socias honoríficas y entregarles ahora una pequeña placa. Así que procedo a darles la placa. Muchas gracias.
From Pachi to the four children, women born by surrogacy, would you be willing to become a carrier? That's the first question. And there's another one for the surrogates.
I can start it off, but sorry, I think I kind of messed up the order a little bit. For me personally, I would not be willing to become a surrogate. I don't really want to become pregnant when I'm older. At my current stage in life, I don't plan on becoming pregnant. Pregnancy is kind of scary for me. It kind of freaks me out a little bit. Yeah, so in my opinion, I wouldn't plan on becoming a surrogate or even being pregnant in general, but that's just me as a person.
I do find it kind of weird to ask such a question to young persons. Like, I'm not asking you if you want to become like a surrogate, but from my experience, because maybe I am the older of the panel, I have endometriosis, so I don't know if I can carry a child, but in the association of my parents, almost all of the women that want to do a surrogacy, they do it because they have the same endometriosis. And so I don't know if I want a child, but I think I have so many examples like how to build a family differently, than I have much more options, so I think that's it, but yeah.
I was also thinking the same thing, like I'm not really thinking about that right now yet, so we'll see. I don't even know if I want to carry a child of my own or if maybe I prefer adoption, but you know, I'm focusing on university for now, so we'll see. I'm open to it.
Me dicen que tenemos que parar a las 11:30, ¿no? Entonces, la última, que es muy rápido, preguntan si hay asociaciones de hijos e hijas nacidos por gestación por sustitución y si hay asociaciones de gestantes, que eso es cortito, ¿no? Hasta las 12. Ah, perdón, que parece que podemos seguir. Vamos a ver, la pregunta es, ¿hay asociaciones en vuestros países de hijos e hijas gestados por gestación subrogada? O de gestante, ¿no?
I don't know of one, but I also live in remote Alaska, so I don't have a Costco either, or an IKEA. I have an IKEA. I would imagine that probably in bigger cities that they probably have them, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
No.
In Italy, I don't think there is any organization for children. Often because right now it's like a crime. It's like one of the most biggest crimes. It just became legally. So, and also it's not like I'm one of the oldest children in Italy. So all the other families have still small kids who are maybe 10 or 12. So there's time for that, but definitely we're thinking about creating something. It's got to be something that like the eldest generation creates. So my generation of my friends, basically. But yeah.
I think last year when we met for the first time, we started like writing like a tribune, like as European children born of surrogacy, and so yeah, we are kind of the oldest, and like right now the tribune we have like 12 because over 18, yeah, we're like not so many, but we are starting to get together, I think, and the more we met like other children, it's also really great to share our stories and like hear different experiences, and hopefully it also can help make our voices heard, because in the current debate there is much talk about what we should be feeling, and that's not the reality. I think we are showing how perfectly healthy and happy and just normal we are, and so yeah, we have the occasion to get together. I think that's really great.
So another question from Pachi for the surrogates. Would have you accepted to be the carrier of a family who didn't want to keep contact with you after birth? ¿Hubieras aceptado? ¿Estás traduciendo?
for me, that was not an option for me. So.
Same with me.
Same. I mean, I don't know that I recall it ever being specified in any way, like a specific type of communication that I would be granted, but I could tell just in our first meeting that it wouldn't be an issue to still have some sort of contact after.
The agency I used had different levels, so when you did all your initial interviews, they would ask, are you okay with maybe a picture every year, or do you want to be able to have actual phone calls? So there were different levels, and both Tommaso and Franco and me just said, well, let's just let it be whatever it grows into, and there were no bounds. I've come over multiple times and visited. They've come over. Last time they came over was in 2015, and we did a tour of pregnancy life, and where was I living, and where were they born, and things like that. So we just kind of said we wanted contact, but there were no specific rules. But some people will say, we'll send pictures, but that's it. And but it needs to be agreed upon by both parties.
Bueno, en principio no hay más preguntas. Hay un mensaje que nos ha mandado Martina Díaz, de Gestación por Sustitución de México, que os da las gracias por existir, porque le hacéis sentirse orgullosa de su trabajo, ¿vale? Y en principio no hay más preguntas. Entonces sí, dejamos un descansito, ¿no? Gracias.